Welcome back to Firebrand Hobbies. I'm your host Tyson, and today we'll be talking and painting up the Death Guard Hellbrute. The first step in the process of painting this Hellbrute, I primed it black and then I primed over it white just to make sure the recesses were mostly black. And then I went over Plaguebearer's flesh and all the armor panels of the Hellbrute. So let's talk about Hellbrutes and Death Guard. In 9th edition, when I got my first Hellbrutes were overshadowed. If it wanted to be a firing platform, the Blightholler was the better choice. If it wanted to be a melee bully unit, the freaking Bloat Drone was the better choice. And it was kind of sad. And even when you run a Dreadnought, it was overshadowed by the infamous Contemptor Dreadnought and Tallyman with Tollkeeper Relic combo, while the Contemptor Dreadnought had Volkite weapons. And it was underwhelming to see a really cool, unique, lore-wise model, because the model's old, just be overshadowed by all this stuff. And in 10th edition, I was looking forward to like the new rules for it, and I was really hoping that it would be better than what it was. But it was just making the unit -1 toughness in contagion range, quote unquote, whenever you shoot it. And I was like, oh man, that's not good. Like, it didn't really feel great. So I thought, well, Hellbrute's going to be put on the shelf again. Well, it turns out with the past data slate, making it where your target can be -1 ballistic or weapon skill, -1 save, and lose OC and leadership, the Hellbrute kind of has like a utility role more than like a firing platform or a bully unit. And I kind of was like thinking to myself, I think the Hellbrute finally has like a spot in a list. For once in my life, seeing a box be useful for one. Before I continue, the next step was using Agron's Dunes on the skin. I'm essentially following the same color scheme as my Demon Prince video because I can actually thoroughly enjoy this way of painting my Death Guard than how I used to. But yeah, Hellbrutes finally have like a role, like a utility role. Early game, get a target within contagion range, which is early game -1 to weapon skill or ballistic skill, or -1 save so your other targets can fight it. And thinking on it more, like if you want to get it early game, you need long range weapons. So I snipped the multi-melta off of the Dark Imperium Hellbrute and slapped on some blast cannons on it just to make it have some range to it. Honestly, auto cannons may be a little bit better so you get more shots out of your buck, but that's what I did because Death Guard does not have toughness, strength 12 weapons unless you ran it like a Predator or something. But also, just if you guys were curious, there is 2 things I added on to the Dark Imperium model. That is a Mortarian incense balls, I think is what it's called, on the chain, which just fit perfectly. It was kind of funny. And then I just added in a Chaos Spawn tentacle in the mouth of the Hellbrute Fist. Death Guard in general, after the recent change to their play company role, actually looked kind of viable, but not obviously like upper B tier or even like mid. It's still kind of like D tier out of everything. But it would be just freaking harassment to go against like a shooty army or a melee army, making it harder for them to actually hit you, or just make Space Marines save on Scion saves naturally without AP, or make Custodians be like Space Marine saves. Like, it's actually pretty decent, but you have to build off of what contagion you want to use for it. But before I continue, obviously, I use Gilliman's flesh on the tentacles of the Hellbrute. There wasn't really a lot of tentacles to run off of, but yeah. Lethal hits on all the models. If you build lethal hits off with the Biologus Putrefier, the -1 save becomes even more of a detriment, being able to do 5s and 6s whenever you shoot at a target to go straight through their wounds and into their saves, making just bolt guns spamming like even more valuable shooting at tanks and stuff, just to potentially chip off wounds. Because then at that point, like Lehman Russes would be saving on Space Marine saves, like 3-ups. Like, it's essentially -1 AP throughout the board, and it's crazy. Caribird Crimson was applied to the Gilliman flesh and to certain parts of the model where it felt like skin would be kind of sore or bruised up. Yeah, in the part where the head's in the Hellbrute, I've made the tentacles and stuff that are, well, not tentacles, the wiring, also Caribird Crimson. The question is like, how should you run a Hellbrute in your list? Because they're not strong. Like, they're really squishy compared to bloat drones and blight haulers, but they're also, there's no -1 damage anymore, so they're even more squishier than before. And at that point, you just probably want to run a long-range weapon. Just shoot from afar first round and get your debuff on them, and then you can run a missile launcher too, which can be buffed by Lord of Virulence if you really wanted to, or you can run plasma cannon, the Hellbrute plasma cannon, and then have Lord of Virulence with the missile launcher, and then boom, you got hitting on 2s constantly on a target. But you're probably not going to proc Lord of Virulence's buff on the first battle round. Think about it, because it's 18 inches. Seraph Sepia was applied to the horns and bones of the Hellbrute, and also the toenails that the Hellbrute's foot have. Yes, there's toenails that I even painted, and I don't know how to feel about it. The other question is like, how many Hellbrutes do you want to run? And I say at least one. I mean, in small games, like, one may be too much points, but in big games, you can have at least one. And in my current 2K list that I plan on playing with my friend whenever he comes back, I have 2 Hellbrutes, but I don't have a last cannon on one of them. It's just a multi-melted, but I have 2 because I want to at least try to see how much you can benefit off of the like early game debuffs. And you can also build off the early game debuffs by having bloat drones, or in my case, my Warlord Demon Prince with wings, and just having fast units run up the board to make the contagion range worse. Or you can also just run the plus Mortarion in general, but I don't run Mortarion this time. I don't really like, yeah, he's like an auto include in these lists, but I just don't want to auto include him because it just feels weird auto including something that's just like superiorly better but also worse than your whole army. Blood Angels Red was applied to all the little eyes that the model has, and then I painted over the rim of all the armor plating with Retributor's armor, which was probably the most tedious part about the whole paint job. And I think we should also talk about the state of Death Guard in general. Like, with this potential thing, what the list idea that I can see that actually probably would work is having Blitzkrieg units run up, get Contagion Rain on stuff, and then just have a slow advance of just chip damage or big blocks of Terminators just absolutely shooting and hoping that you land a critical hit on the lethal hits, especially with the -1 save. With horde armies like Guardsmen, Tau, Orcs that really don't have a good shooting, or even maybe Admech too, that don't have a good shooting, the -1 weapon skill ballistic kills would be detrimental. Like with Guardsmen in general, having Guardsmen forced to shoot on 5s and most of their tanks on 5s, like it hurts. Like, I know it hurts because I play Guardsmen, like Imperial Guard. Like it hurts just having a unit that you cannot shoot, and I could see that happening with Death Guard now, but like it really would just depend on what your opponent is playing, because I'm not going to play -1 weapon skill or ballistic skill to Custodians. I mean, you could, but I feel like having them being forced to save wars because all your weapons in Death Guard have like no AP is probably more useful. Like Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights, you could run -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill, make them shoot worse, or you can make sure that you can get them down quicker with the chip damage that you can do to them. I mean, it really is based on your preference, though. Basaculum Great, the Great, just I'll have a picture up. I can't speak, nor do I really feel like looking it up and correcting myself, so there you go. It was applied to all the metal parts of the Hellbrute, and all the metal parts were then kind of just brushed over lightly with typhus corrosion, and then lightly with Neculum oxide. I'll also have a picture of those up. And then with the gold trimming, if I spilt the gold onto the green of the model, I brushed it over with the khaki model color paint. This is the green one to the right. And then I kind of just brushed it over with typhus corrosion, just to kind of give the armor a little corroding effect, but also just to hide my mistakes, because I made a lot of mistakes because I was getting really anxious about painting up the gold trims. It was really frustrating for me. I plan on making another Hellbrute model, maybe out of like a Contempt or Dreadnought chassis or something, because the other Hellbrute that I have is old and it's the first time using green stuff and kind of the first time painting, so it doesn't look terribly great. But the last step was using Agrax Earthshade, and then you can check out how I did the basing in my other Death Guard / Nurgle videos. I forgot to record it, but you guys can just look at it and just skip to the end if you really wanted to. But yeah, after that was said and done, I was completely finished up with my Hellbrute. So yeah, our Hellbrute's kind of back in Death Card list. I certainly think so. You guys can tell me what you guys think about Hellbrutes now. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. It's free, and you don't have to pay a penny for it. I'll see you guys in the next video.